right, so let's get started. Okay, apparently my thing is. Oh, that's why. There we go. Now I can stop hearing myself echoing like 3 times. I haven't done this in a while. So, welcome to the stream. You might know me as Kamisi from the Cross Stitch Chat Discord. Tonight we are going to be focusing on doing a tutorial for Pattern Keeper, which is an currently Android exclusive app, which helps cross stitch artists, we'll say artists, we're artists, right? Artists to read their patterns in an easier fashion. So one thing to know is that I am not running it on a native Android device. I am actually running it on BlueStacks on my computer. So I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. So this is what BlueStacks looks like. It is an Android emulator. It is the one I think that even the developer of the app recommends. It doesn't come looking like this. These two apps right here I have added, but it's basically, it imitates an Android phone, except it's on your computer. I have heard of problems with the current Mac OS update that you cannot currently run BlueStacks on the current Mac update. I don't personally have a Mac computer, so I would need obviously somebody to verify that, but that is what I have heard from the Cross Stitch Chat Discord. So there are a couple things you're going to need. One, you're going to need a cloud saving device, a cloud storage of some kind. I use Dropbox because I've always used Dropbox, it's kind of my thing. You can also use Google Drive. You just need some form of cloud storage. Another thing you're going to need is you're going to need to download Pattern Keeper. It's available in the Google Play Store. This is how it loads on BlueStacks. So you would literally just type in Pattern Keeper. There it is. It is considered a cross-stitch project tracker. It is currently in early access. I believe it is $8.99 if you want to buy the whole thing, but there is a 30-day trial. So once you have that downloaded, and you have your Dropbox downloaded, you can load Pattern Keeper. This is what a fresh install of Pattern Keeper looks like. I don't have any charts loaded. Asa is the developer. It is a one-person development team, which is why I really encourage you that if you like the app, to buy it, because again, it's a one-person team. They're doing all of this on their own. It's pretty amazing. So this is it. This is the interface. The plus, it doesn't get much easier. You click the plus. It tells you need a PDF file. Pattern Keeper only runs PDFs. It will not run any of the extensions from different softwares. It will only run a PDF. It will read different forms of PDFs. Yes, I am recording. I think I'm recording. I should be recording. Now I'm recording. Okay. In summary, what I did is I opened BlueStacks. I opened Pattern Keeper. I have my Dropbox downloaded and I am signed into it. You want to make sure that your patterns are uploaded to Dropbox. But yes, I am recording Pixie. Once you have all that and you have your thing here, you hit Open PDF. Now there are options that you can download straight to your device. I don't do that because I like to make sure all of my stuff is in one area because I lose stuff a lot. It's kind of what I do. By the way, if you have any questions while I am streaming, please feel free to say it, type it in the chat, either in Discord or in the stream chat. Either one works. So you click Dropbox. Why are you doing this to me? There we go. It just took a minute. I have a lot of folders. I have a lot of folders. This is the view I prefer because otherwise it just looks like a bunch of nonsense to me. So you want to find wherever you keep your cross-stitch folders. I was a teacher for a while, so I have a lot of English. I have a lot of English class files. So here are my cross stitches. I'm going to try and use primarily free patterns because I don't want to get kicked in the butt by anybody for showing paid for patterns. So if you have a question about a specific pattern, I can obviously try and help you troubleshoot it. But I'm going to be working mostly with freebies because it's just safer for everybody involved. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the Animal Crossing Stitch Along that is being released by the Cunning Cross Stitch Discord by Stuart. So one thing to note, Pattern Keeper prefers black and white patterns. Even if you don't personally prefer black and white patterns, Pattern Keeper has a much easier time reading black and white patterns. So if you have the option of downloading both a color version and a black and white version, please go ahead and do that, because it will save you a headache. It'll save the program a headache. So I have the black and white version of the Animal Crossing Stitch Along frame. I click it. It is reading the pattern. It is parsing my grids. The software has become a lot more intuitive as far as basically reading non-supported patterns. There are a list of easily supported patterns, and I will show you one of those through a Heaven and Earth Designs freebie. Because while, I personally think Pattern Keeper is very useful for even non-full coverage patterns, I think it really shines in the full coverage pattern arena. So here, does the chart excerpt below have any shaded or light colored rows at the columns or edges? This is basically saying, does your pattern have an overlap? If it does, it will show up here. This pattern does. This pattern has an overlap of 5. So we click yes. We need to adjust this number, make it 5, and hit OK. We successfully imported your charts, but we could not import all thread numbers. Please input the missing numbers and verify that the legend and mockups look correct. So this takes you to the screen for importing your thread palette or your thread legend. This one is telling you that if you do not want to assign all colors now, you can hit advanced option and assign a flat gray color for everything you don't assign. We don't need that right now, but we will. Another thing to note is that Pattern Keeper only reads full crosses. It does not read quarter stitches, it does not read 3/4 stitches, it does not read half cross stitches. It only reads full X's. So one of the things you'll notice here is that in the Animal Crossing SAL, or Stitch Along, it has several instances of 3/4 stitches in 2 different corners in the legend. So you can see here and here. And honestly, this legend looks like a hot mess. It looks like a huge mess, and it looks like you're never going to figure it out, but we're going to go through it, and it's going to make sense. So one useful thing up here for uploading a thread palette or a thread legend is that you can actually switch between the PDF version and the mockup. This is useful because in order to do your thread legend, you actually need your symbols. So like this is the thread list for the Animal Crossing SAL. An overlap basically, Rue, is the idea that if you have a multi-page pattern, a lot of designers will create an overlap, so that way you know where the 2 pages meet up. So let me pull up the PDF real fast. Here we go. So like here, this is the last, this is the last page of the pattern. So this would be the bottom right corner, right? So this way you know that these 5 rows are repeated on the page above it. And also these 5 rows are repeated on the page next to it. It's basically to make sure that your patterns are matching up. Because some people, what they do is they actually print out their patterns and will tape them together. Obviously, in the age of the interwebs, we don't have to do that much, but there are still some people who prefer to do it. Most of the time, your pattern will show you, like there will be a grayed out edge where your overlap is. It'll be colored in a different way somehow. There are some patterns that are not good at showing their overlaps. Usually it's like grayed out. For most of the patterns I've run into, they're usually grayed out. Yeah. Does that make sense, Rue? Okay. So yeah, that's what an overlap is. Overlap is basically just a designer's way of making it easier for you to follow a paper pattern. Okay, the Elmhurst one does have an overlap. Yeah. So that's a free stitch along that's going on through the Elmhurst library that a lot of people in the Cross Stitch Discord are currently doing. So this is, like I said, this is your key for your threads. As of right now, there is not really anything that can be done with fractionals. The way I handle them, and I'm going to show this in a minute, is I tend to input the colors anyway, even if I can't highlight them and I can't, you know, whatever. I can't mark them off or whatever. That way I don't have to necessarily go and look at my key, like my pattern. And that way I can just be like, okay, I look at the symbol list on the side of Pattern Keeper, and I'm like, okay, I need this color for this symbol, and I need this color from this symbol. It makes it a little bit easier for me. Ultimately, the pattern, like the software just isn't capable of handling it. And I think that's because, again, it was originally designed for handling full coverage pieces like Heaven and Earth Designs, like Tilton Crafts, which don't have fractionals. Does that make sense? It's really annoying that they can't do fractionals that easily, but I mean, we make it work, right? We make it work somehow. It's still a really useful tool. All right, so let's get started on filling out our legend. So the first symbol we need is the kind of weird mushroom. I'm going to be calling these things all sorts of weird things, but that's just how I think about them. So this is the screen it brings up. To upload your threads. It has your symbol up here, and this symbol here is actually what kind of thread you're loading in. You have the option of DMC, Anchor, Sullivan's, Madeira, I can't say that one, and a custom. Patternyan? Sure, why not? But these obviously up here are the major providers of embroidery floss in the United States and most of Europe, I think. DMC is a major one for the US. Anchor is huge in the UK. Sullivan's is a cheaper version of is a cheaper alternative to DMC and Anchor. Madeira I've never used, and obviously custom is custom. So for this one, we're going to put in 543, I believe. Double checking it. Yes, 543. This one we're looking for the weird umbrella, which is 3828. One thing that has been recently updated with Pattern Keeper is actually its ability to do blends, which is something that's really useful if you like doing Lola Lotta patterns. I can't say that 3 times fast, but a lot of patterns use blends. And it's because DMC has only so many colors, right? Like it only has a limited palette. So what you do if you want to upload a blend is you actually click this button. And what it will do is it will create a gradient effect in that square. So like, say I was doing a blend between 992, which is leaf green, and I was doing 3348, which is yellow green. You see what it does? It creates a gradient between the two colors to make it a little bit easier. But we're not doing that. We're not doing blends. So we're just going to put in a color that I've already forgotten. 3822. And this is basically the process for uploading your palette. You'll see that in this chart in particular, there are colors that have no symbols. That is because that is being used specifically for backstitch. And Pattern Keeper does not handle backstitch. You say you're having trouble loading a pattern in, Rue? What kind of trouble are you having? While I'm working on loading these symbols that my brain sometimes turns into nonsense. It says no working size. Could you tell me where or who, or basically what designer is the pattern from. That's what I'm trying to ask. This is one of those fractional situations. Elmhurst. There is a possibility that Elmhurst is not using a supported software to create their pattern. Not all pattern softwares are compatible with Pattern Keeper. I know that I want to say it's WinStitch. Let me double check because I will say it wrong. Nope, it's WinStitch. WinStitch I know is compatible. I know that they're improving compatibility for a couple other platforms. So there's just a chance that Elmhurst is not using one of those. Yeah, there's a chance that Elmhurst just isn't using one of the supported softwares, and that can make it a lot harder, obviously. Thank you. So last. Okay. All right. Gotcha. All right. So, yeah, I mean, phones are completely like viable. Phones are completely viable for using Pattern Keeper. I know I have a tablet that I use it on normally, but I also have no qualms about sitting in front of my computer sketching. All right. So this is one of the fractional situations here that I was talking about. Is it not showing my... Oh, it helps if I click on it. There we go. This is one of the fractional situations I was talking about. I am still going to input the threads, even though I know that I won't be able to search them. So for this one, I need to enable a blend. Even though I'm not doing a blend, I need to enable it. So this blend is the top symbol, which is the umbrella, is 3828. And the bottom symbol is 3822. Again, this isn't going to be useful as far as searching goes, but it will save me time when I'm actually like working on my cross stitch. I'm not going to repeat it because it's the same thing. I'm lazy. So we'll go back to uploading our palette. And this is the really useful thing, is being able to have your PDF pulled up. Like, I love that feature because otherwise it's a complete pain in the butt to keep like switching back and forth between your PDF reader and the software, which is how I did it before I realized they made it easy for me to begin with. I like to make my life a little bit harder than it needs to be. Are there any other questions so far? Because this is actually like the really boring part. It's like, you get to watch me type numbers in. Aren't you lucky? I think it's not compatible if you have to set the grid yourself on import. No, that is not always the case. I know that I recently helped Snowy on our cross stitch Discord to set her grid, and she was still able to search her symbols. I know that if you do an import of an image, like if you take a picture of the pattern and like save it as a PDF and upload it that way, I know you will not be able to search that way. Like it doesn't parse out all of the symbols and everything. But if it's already natively in a PDF, you should be able to search it. As I turn off my numlock, because I'm good like that. Again, we're doing the top symbol first, which is the 3 arrows pointing down. And then we're going to do 722, which is the, except I can't type. All right, so you see how this one's all grayed out? It's because this isn't a pattern that was made with Pattern Keeper in mind. So it's kind of having a small stroke, trying to figure out what is a legend key and what isn't. In this case, we just skip over it. We move on to the next color. Coffee mug. I could go for coffee. All right. This is umbrella, umbrella, umbrella. There's umbrella. So again, we're going to do the top color first, which is 3828, and then the bottom one is Ecru. So you just type it in. This is Ecru. Skippy, 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 skippy. All right. Swirly, swirly. There's a swirly, swirly. Ooh. Like I said, sometimes these symbols and everything, my brain just refuses to read them, and I'm like, ugh. Burrow says, if you delete all the pattern pages that show grids except for the first one, that should have the frame and weeks 2 and 3 on it. The Elmhurst loads up. You'll just need to input your thread numbers. Okay, that's helpful to know. I hadn't actually tried loading the Elmhurst pattern as of yet. I mean, I have it. I just haven't loaded it. That's 792 and 712. Again, doing the top one first. Yeah, one of the things that is helpful is that if you have a pattern that has multiple versions of the same pattern in it, if you can edit your PDF at all to remove one version of the pattern, it's really helpful, because that way the software isn't getting confused and being like, I don't know what I'm doing right now, what the heck. And again, having the black and white pattern, super helpful. Did I already put that symbol in? I did. Nope, that is the wrong color. Cannot read. Diamond. And this is honestly the slowest part, is just loading in all of the colors. Not every chart requires you to do this, but if you are using a chart that is not 100% supported, it will more than likely happen. And again, I think it's worth the time investment of sitting here typing numbers, because it saves you so much time in the end, especially if you have trouble reading patterns with overlaps, because let's face it, who hasn't tried to stitch when they're exhausted and they can't math in your brain? I often cannot math in my brain. All right, so you'll see that I have all of the colors uploaded, except I have a bunch of ones that are in red. It will not let you upload. It will not let you go on with this unless you fill in these. So this is what the mock-up looks like. Is it 100% accurate? It's pretty close. It may not be like, you know, the end all and be all, but it's pretty close for doing all of the solid X's. But one of the things it talked about to us when we first uploaded is we have to assign a flat gray color to all unassigned symbols. So you can see that filled in a lot of the white spots that we were seeing around the pattern. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and hit forward. And this is what comes up. So you see that, oh, it's actually highlighting them. Wouldn't have called that. But there are some areas that are kind of a little bit of a mess, and this is because sometimes Pattern Keeper does try to import the backstitching. So it gets a little bit messy. So this is why you always want to make sure you do have your PDF, just in case things get a little bit funky. But you can see here it's loading up those. Let me find one of the solid colors. So another nice feature of Pattern Keeper is that it tells you how many stitches of a particular color you have and how many you have left, which is really nice when you're, you know, doing a massive project and you find yourself drowning you find yourself drowning in all of these stitches of a particular color. I know we've all hit those solid color blocks and we're like, I can't do this anymore. But it tells you basically how many stitches of a particular color you have. So in this pattern, 704 is the most populous color. This is the menu that has your entire thread palette on it. You'll see that it even includes the messed up ones. I don't know why, it just does. But what Pattern Keeper allows you to do is, say you are a start from the middle kind of person. I'm not, but say you are. What are you doing to me, Pattern Keeper? There we go. So if you are using this on BlueStacks, you need to make sure middle start for life. I'm bad. I'm lazy. I don't want to possibly mess up, so I'm just like, no. But one of the things that you need to be able to know how to do on BlueStacks in particular is you need to be able to zoom in and out. So that is done by holding down Control and using your mouse wheel or your trackpad to zoom in and out. This is what it looks like when you zoom all the way out. It shows you the entire dimensions of the pattern. If you zoom all the way in, it shows you enormous symbols. Except I apparently started in a blank spot. There we go. I'm like, where are all the symbols? One of the good things is that you can estimate your middle from looking at this. So I think I want to say the Animal Crossing is 150 by 160. I might be horribly wrong. So it'll at least allow you to estimate your middle. So up here are your main tools while you're working in Pattern Keeper. This is your search function. This is what allows you to click on a symbol and find out what color it is and where the nearby stitches of that same color are. So say you're being me and not and not Snow Laugh, and you're actually starting at the top, or you're starting in a corner. And you want to see how many stitches of this color are in the area. If you use the magnifying glass and you click here, it allows you to highlight that color and all the stitches in the color, so you can see, all right, approximately where are my nearest stitches, how far am I going to be traveling the thread potentially, is it worth it to start a new thread? Sometimes that's a question, right? Like sometimes you're like, I kind of feel like playing thread chicken. So this will tell you if you can actually successfully play thread chicken or not. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, maybe, if it lets me. Okay, one thing for BlueStacks is you actually have to be on the directional tool. I think this might actually be true of the entire software, but in particular, you need to be on the directional tool, like the tool that allows you to move around in order to zoom in and out. One thing that is useful is that while something is highlighted, you can actually mark off your stitches. So like say I stitched this area and I ran out of thread. I would just hit done, and you'll see that these stitches are marked off. And over here, you'll see I have stitched 53 stitches today, and I am at 0.66% of the entire project. You can drag it? Yeah. You didn't know you could drag? Oh, you mean for selecting stitches. Yeah. You can drag. See? Dragging. Does that make sense? Another thing is if you... Well, I'm glad I've saved you some of your sanity. You can actually drag. Yes, you can drag. If you accidentally end up highlighting something, there's the ability to clear right here. You just hit clear. Another thing you can do is say you pulled a me and you actually grabbed the wrong color because the numbers decided to invert themselves. This is the frogging button, which is really helpful. We don't like the frog. The frog is not our friend, but sometimes the frog visits. So you just hit this and it actually pulls all of those marked off stitches and will take away from the stitches you've done today and your total. Team no frog. Yes, we are all team no frog. We don't like frogs. No offense to frogs. But yeah, that's the basic functionality of Team Fudge. I'm not on Team Fudge because my perfectionism just won't let it. But I'm trying. I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. So that is the basic functionality of Pattern Keeper. That is the basic functionality of Pattern Keeper. One thing to know is that there are ways to mark off entire squares, but that actually requires me to unhighlight things, I believe. So what you do, all right, you can actually select all of the unfinished pages, all the unfinished stitches on a page. Like say you need to, oh right, I have to be on this. Say you started this off on paper or in a PDF and you're like, I'm already done that page. Screw this. I'm not marking this off all individually. You actually have the ability to do it without having to individually select all of the stitches or individually select every square. So let me repeat how you do that. So let's zoom in. Oop, that's too close. Let's not get that close. I feel like the guy from Aladdin. So what you do is you select your highlighting marker, your highlighting tool, find your symbol of choice, it doesn't really matter, and hold down. This allows you to select all unfinished stitches in a square and allows you to select all unfinished stitches on a page. Either one's an option, depends on what you need. This will select in a 10 by 10 grid all the stitches that you have not already previously marked off. The other one will select, like I showed you, the entire page. Very useful, like I said, if you were previously doing a project via a PDF or a printed page and you did not know about the wonders and majesty of Pattern Keeper. That is how you go about updating your progress. Are there any questions so far about the basic functionality? All right, consider this your hydration reminder. You should be drinking water. Drink water, people. So another thing that they offer is that you can actually customize your experience to a certain degree in Pattern Keeper. That is what that gear is for. So one of them is showing page breaks. Another is showing use translucent highlights. Dr. Pepper has water in it, but it's not water. Use translucent highlights. It's so you can see the color a little bit easier. You also have the ability to customize your search color and your parking color. So if you really hate the color green for some reason, or you can't see it well, like if you have a color blindness deficiency or anything, you can change it. Parking color. Parking we're going to get into a little bit in a minute. But this is really useful when you are doing full coverage patterns. But yeah, being able to change your color to like, say, I like pink. I don't know. It's a thing I do. I just changed it to pink. So now all of my highlights will show up as pink. Diagonal lines are really useful if you plan on doing parking. Or let me say that again. If you plan on diagonally parking. I usually do lower left to upper right. And I do spacing between diagonals as 10 because that's usually how most, I'll explain parking in a second. That's how most patterns are set up. Another thing that's really useful is you are able to customize some shortcuts, which this isn't default on every single one, so you'll have to set it up every time. But like in move mode, if you double click on a single stitch, it allows you to search and highlight the symbol. In markup mode, which is when you're using the highlighting tool, if you double click on a single stitch, you have the option of finish or frog a stitch or park your thread. I usually end up making it my parking shortcut because when I'm working in Heaven and Earth Designs patterns, I do parking. So for me, my cross stitch method is I go from lower left to upper right and then from lower right to upper left. So I park in the lower left corner. Double click on selection is finish or frog a stitch. So these are some of the chart display settings that you can do that are really useful, I think, particularly, like I said, if you're doing a big project. But this is what the parking lines look like. and I will bring up, oop, I just highlighted by mistake. So this is what it looks like basically when you set up your diagonals. I will show you it on a Heaven and Earth Designs freebie, like I said, but just so you can see sort of like what it looks like. All right, these are all highlighted, and let me do this. You can see now that my search color is pink because I changed it. Oh, we got a new question? No. Oh. So yeah, I mean, like I said, if you have like a color deficiency or something that you can't see greens or you can't see blues or whatever, I think that's a useful tool. So let's get out of this pattern. You do that by going back, and you'll see that this is my only pattern in here. So we need to open a new one. So we're gonna go back to my Nerd Cross Stitching, and we're gonna go to Heaven and Earth Designs because I have an entire folder of them. So let's pick one that was a freebie from a little while ago. So At the Threshold was a freebie. You'll see that it parses all the grids. It's a big pattern, so it's going to take a second. One nice thing about the Heaven and Earth Designs and the Tilton Crafts and basically all of the supported patterns is that it automatically uploads your threads, which is nice because I hate typing in thread numbers. I mean, like I said, if I have to go between not having this and typing in thread numbers, I'm going to obviously type it in the thread numbers. But this gives you your mock-up and shows you what the quote-unquote finished product will look like. It's not entirely accurate, but it's a thing. So we'll hit moving on, and you'll see this is what a full coverage pattern looks like in Pattern Keeper. It's chaos. It is, most of those are actually freebies. I did not buy most of them. Yeah, you can actually, like, if you have a color highlight. Okay, you should be able to do the long crest with a color highlighted. I don't actually know. How did I do that? So yeah, say I'm highlighting this color. Okay, you can do the long one with it pressed. Okay, I didn't know if you could. I usually unhighlight it, but that's actually the biggest color in this pattern. So we'll just do that and we'll hit clear. All right, so this is what a Heaven and Earth, Designs pattern looks like. So let me set up my stuff real fast. I'm gonna change this to a pink because why not? Let's do that color. And we're gonna make my parking color, we'll leave it blue. So now you can see it is bringing up all of my diagonals, and it has the color that I have searched. One thing to know is that if you search a color and you decide not to do that, you can actually click the same color and it'll unhighlight it. So parking. There's been a lot of questions about parking in the server, and I kind of wanted to cover it a little bit. Parking is a method used particularly in patterns that have a lot of confetti. And by confetti, I mean solitary stitches or a couple of stitches of one color in an area that they're just like, you can look in this diagonal right here and you'll see that the 8s are kind of confetti-like because there's only about 3, 6, 7, 10 of them. I can't math. There's about 10 of them. So that's not a lot of that color compared to all of the rest of them being in this color right here, right? So parking is a method where you will basically move your thread into the next available stitch area. So that way it's waiting for you and you aren't constantly snipping off your threads, restarting the color, and basically it's a time-saving method. It is not a thread saver method at all. Like it will not be an efficient method. If you are worried about running out of thread, don't do it. It's not going to help you. So basically how parking works is we're going to use this first diagonal right here as our example because So right here, you have your first diagonal. For parking, you stitch all the way across this to the 10th stitch. Then you do the 9, the 8, the 7, the 6, the 5, the 4, the 3, the 2, the 1. You select yours. So say we're going to do the 8s. Why do I keep clicking that? I mean, you click this. So we have 8s, right? This is what the 8s look like in the top of this corner. So say we're going to do 8. The way that parking works for me, and not everybody does it the same, but I'll tell you how I do it, and I'll try and explain how other people do it, is you would do your 8s. So you would start your stitching here in this top corner, right? You would stitch this one, you would stitch this one. Now, most people, what they would do is they would then park their thread down in this row, pick up this color, stitch across, repeat going down like that, right? Like, so they would stitch the 8s in one row, then stitch it kind of looks like a washer, but the square with the dot. And then they would keep alternating between those colors going down the rows. The way that I prefer to do it is I will actually stitch all of a color in a diagonal at a time, or at least as far as I can. So like I'll go through here. This is where I start my thread, right? Like this is where I'll do if I'm doing 2 over 1, I'll do my loop start. If I'm not doing 2 over 1, this one would actually be pretty tricky because of it being so far apart. But if you're not doing 2 over 1 and you're doing like 1 over 1, there are ways to loop start using only one thread, but it gets kind of messy. Anyway, no matter how you start it, you would start here. Then you would stitch this one. Then I would continue down, making my way across until I hit this. Then we go ahead and we mark them off, right? We've stitched all of these 8s and we hit this. And that shows me, all right, that color is done. What you then look for is the closest possible square with the same color. So in this instance, we're stopping here, right? Like this is near the bottom of our diagonal and we're right here. We have an 8 right here. So what we would do is we would actually put our thread in the bottom corner or the top corner, whichever way you stitch, where you would start your stitch. And then what you do is that's not what I want to do. You select that, you hit this, and it actually tells you can park your thread. So like I said, I park in the lower left corner and it will show you this is where I have it parked. It also allows you, if you double click, because I said it, you can double click on the stitch and it will let you. And it'll actually frog it too. But you have all 4 corners as an option for your parking. This is what it looks like if you park it in the upper left. So it will actually reflect where you have your stitch sitting. Then I would go through and I'd do all of these squares with the circles. And I would start a new thread for going up here. I would do all of this. I would do this and this and this. This and this. This and this. And I would probably actually park my thread again when I hit this area because I already have a thread here, right? So I'd actually look over here and be like, okay, this is my closest thread, and I'd park it. Like I said, it is not a thread saving method, but Pattern Keeper makes parking a lot easier because you don't have to remember what the color is. You just need to look at your pattern and be like, okay, I'm at this point. This is what this thread is. Is there any questions about parking? A lot of people don't use it. A lot of people don't like it. They find it confusing. They find it ugly and messy and all sorts of things. I like it because I'm lazy. I don't like starting threads over and over and over again because it gets annoying. But that's just sort of how I do. Any questions on parking? Or about anything I've said so far? Because I know I talk kind of fast sometimes. Again, another parking blows your mind. Yeah, it can get kind of confusing. Another thing to be aware of, again, is you can select all of a color by clicking on the color in your side menu. I think you can also collapse this. Yeah, you can collapse it. I don't, because I forget what color I'm doing. Okay, take your time, Rue. Because I forget what color I'm doing all the time, and I'm like, do I need to pull this color out? No, you have it right in your hand. But again, that's me. I have memory problems. So I'm actually going to go ahead and select these, and I'm going to frog, because obviously I have not used this pattern yet, and I don't know when I will get a chance to use it. But yeah, you can kind of see how the pattern keeper was originally built more or less to do full coverage. I think it's very adaptable as a pattern, as a program. And for the price, I mean, considering, you can enlarge it as large as you need. You don't have to worry about printing it out. You don't have to worry about, okay. So you park the thread, which means you unthread the needle and leave the thread for later. With how I thread my needle, I can't unthread. One thing that you can do is you can actually have multiple needles. One of the things I do is I usually have around 5 needles going at once, and I stick them to needle minders on my project. I can actually send a picture of it later, but I'll basically have like a needle minder out to the side that I'll just put my currently unused needles on. And that way it's just sort of hanging out there, and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. And that way, when I'm coming up to that color, I just pull it off the needle minder and I keep going. Does that make sense, Rue? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I would just do, like, it doesn't make sense to you? Okay. You know what a needle minder is, right? Like that magnetic genius thing that we use to make sure we're not stabbing ourselves with needles when we're like taking them off our projects, or that way we're not holding them in our teeth and swallowing needles. You have an obsession. Needle minders are pretty great. So what I do is I have like, usually for a full coverage pattern like this, is I would use probably like 2 to 3 needle minders. One of them is for my active needle, the one that I'm working on. Like, suddenly if the cat has something, I need to jump up and go, stop them from creating havoc and chaos. I'll stick my active needle on that one needle minder. It's usually off to the left. I don't know why, it just is. But off to my right, I'll have 2 other ones. And what I do is I'll have up to 5 needles threaded and working in my project. And instead of unthreading every single time that I change colors, I just put the needle on the needle minder and leave it. Does that make sense? Yeah, so you just use multiple needles. Some people don't like that. They think it's wasteful. I don't see the big problem with it. If you're doing a project this big, you got to expect you're going to need to use multiple needles, right? Like, it's not a small project. So that's just sort of how I do it. Again, it just saves me time. It keeps me from having to constantly rethread all of my needles all the time. Some people don't do it that way. It's just sort of how I've adapted to doing it. Are there any other questions about this? And I'll take you back to the main screen to show you a couple other things before I end this shindig. Yeah, exactly. You don't go into a Heavens and Earth Designs pattern thinking you're only going to use one needle. If you manage that, you are something else. You are not human. You are something else entirely. Mostly because I think people lose more than one needle in the process of doing a Heaven and Earth Designs pattern. Okay, so if nobody has any questions about, setting up how to work with parking, how to work with full coverage patterns versus not full coverage patterns, I'm going to take you back to the main screen real fast. And there's a couple of things you can do out here. One thing is that there is an information button, tells you your version, terms of service, privacy. This is useful particularly when show the grid issue. I don't even know if have, I don't know if I have a pattern that would do it. Let me see if I can find one that has the grid issue. You can send me one? All right, if you could just send me one real fast, that would be awesome. Because I'm like, I don't know if I have one. But anyway, while Snowath is bailing me out of not having my patterns, my materials prepared, we're going to go back again. No, that's not what I meant to do. All right, this is the main screen. I don't know why I thought it wasn't the main screen. It is. Up here is help. You can send, this actually links you to the Facebook group. Super useful if you're having a very specific bug or problem, because they have moderators who have been using the software since it started. Obviously, if I'm around, you can ask me. But if there's like a specific bug or something that you just like cannot figure out why it's doing it, they're helpful. There's also a way to go to their help pages. Through the Facebook group, you can actually get links to their Trello boards where they have feature recommendations, and also the ability to suggest designers that you might like to see be supported. I mean, it really depends on how you think about it. Bug, feature, they're kind of the same thing. And you can send a message through here. This allows you to open a PDF without clicking this plus. I don't know why you would go there instead of there, whatever. One thing to be aware of, especially when you're doing patterns that you have, you've imported the legend yourself. This is a very useful thing. You can open the chart and you can edit your legend. This allows you to go in and fix your colors if you messed up. I know that Snowy had a problem that she imported the wrong color for one of her, I think it was the Book Dragon pattern she was doing through Lola Lotta. I can't say that name. That Lola Lotta pattern. So she asked how to fix her color, her legend, without having to redo the whole thing. That's how you do it. It just asks you to re-verify your import, make sure everything's good. I'm obviously not going to fix it because it's not what I do. If you are the type of person who bounces between different devices, like say sometimes you work on your tablet, sometimes you work on your computer, sometimes you work on your phone, whatever. Being able to import and export your progress is super, super important. This is how you will be able to move from device to device without having to re-put in all of your stitches. So, yeah. So, like, I mostly work on my tablet. Sometimes I work on my PC. So being able to have this progress available to me between devices means that I don't have to start over with marking off my stitches. And it will tell me, all right, you're right here. Export progress. Select where to send the file. It'll tell you, like, do you want to send it to your Dropbox? Do you want to save on File Manager or whatever? So I'll hit add to Dropbox. It'll be like, all right, where do you want to put it? And we scroll through all of my folders. I really need to organize my Dropbox more. This is what happens when you have too many hobbies. Hit Nerd Cross Stitch. I might want to add a file for like PK exports, because I try to keep my brain from exploding. And I'll hit add. And that's it. Then if I want to import progress, I click import. I'll go back to here. I will go to PK exports. Click that. And it's successfully imported the progress. Now, mind you, I didn't do anything. Oh, thank you for emailing it to me. That makes my life so much easier. All right, but does that make sense, sort of like how the import-export progress works? Like I said, that's how you move between different things. Devices, that's the word. I'm like, what am I trying to say? All right, so I got the email from from Snowlath. Oop, I'm clicking the wrong device. All right, so let's go back. Let's add a PDF. We're gonna go to this. We're going to see if it has updated. It probably hasn't. Let's give it a chance to refresh. Sorry, this is running just a little bit long, but again, I had a lot of things to cover, and I hope it has been at least marginally useful for figuring out how this program works, because it does kind of have a learning curve. I was lucky in that I kind of got in on it very early. There we go. This is the one. All right, we are importing. We are reading the first page, so no grids found on the PDF. This is what happens when you end up having a pattern that is not gridded. And this is usually because in order to protect their, we'll say intellectual property, their creative properties, a lot of designers will make it so that their patterns are actually images that happen to be part of a PDF. So because you could actually add JPEGs, which is an image extension, into a PDF. So what we have to do is we actually had to scroll through and check that they're correct, add the ones that are faulty. So what we need to do is we have to add a grid here. And this is the part that gets ugly. So what we want to do is we want to edit it. And this page is 64 by 74. So what we do is we go in here, 64 by 74. Don't hit enter, hit OK. And you'll see that now it is providing me a grid that I can match up. I scrolled too far. Go back. Go back. All right. I scrolled too far. I dug too deeply and too greedily. All right. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that this lines up. One of the things you can do is you can zoom in and move it around, which is helpful. You just want to like mess with it and like nudge it more or less. So that looks good. That looks bad. That's probably because this corner is off. Yep. That looks good, right? It is one of the benefits to doing this on a computer because you can obviously see things clearer. So I need to zoom out again. And this is really like, it's time consuming, right? Like, but I think it's worth the annoyance of figuring it out. Did I put the wrong? No, I'm right. I don't know how to math. I'm obviously not going to do all of them because we'd be here forever. Is this one not 64 by 74? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 16, 26. No, this is 48. What am I doing? I can't type numbers. I can't math. I can't anything. And then vertically it is 10, 20, 30. All right, this one's actually okay. I see what this is. All right, so this one is actually 74. So I had it right. I had half of it right. But yeah, basically you're just going to spend time very slowly like pulling at your corners and trying to get it to line up the best you can. I'm not going to do every single page. I'm only going to do like those 2 pages because I don't want to keep you here forever. So now what it'll do is it'll try and process those 2 pages that I just put the grid in for. See what magic it can work. You can see that it does not have an overlap. So you hit no. Does it have an overlap? No. So we were not able to index the symbols. That is usually because the chart is a scan or an image. You're able to see your chart and enter your progress, but you would not be able to search for the symbols. So this is what I was talking about, that when you have an image, you actually can't search for your symbols. So you can see that while all of the symbols are there, well, they are when they load correctly. There we go. While you can see all the symbols are there, and you can highlight them to show that you've finished, you can't actually search for your symbols because it cannot parse out that this is an image. This is also like it can't basically read the symbol itself, so it can't pull that information from the pattern because it's an image. This is another reason, again, why black and white patterns are better for using Pattern Keeper, because usually this isn't as much of an issue. Again, it sometimes happens with black and white patterns too, but it's still useful to be able to see, like, all right, this is what I've done. So I think it's even worth it for patterns that you can't search for the symbols on. But does that make sense how the grid lineup doohickey works? I think I actually did a pretty decent job with this one. It looks pretty accurate. Yeah, 3, 6, yeah, 10. So it's a 10 by 10. So I think I actually did a pretty good job lining that one up. But that's why it's a lot easier to do that on a computer, because again, much larger surface to read on. Are there any other questions about anything I've covered, about the weird grid thing? Or anything like that about Pattern Keeper, about its functionality, about its usefulness? Like I said, I think it's $8.99 in United States currency on the Play Store, but I again could be wrong with that too. It's around $10 or less. So I think it's definitely worth it. And again, the 30-day trial. There is no difference between the trial and the paid, I don't think. Yeah, I actually don't think there is any difference between the trial and the paid. So if you want to give it a go and you want to sort of see, is this useful for me for my cross stitching? Is it useful for me at in my work flow? I bought it within a day of using it. I was like, I am sold. This is amazing. I don't have to think about overlaps. You've got me. We're good. But not everybody's going to love this program. Also, the problems with working on a Mac, obviously, is an issue. I don't know if BlueStacks has gotten that fixed or not. I will have to ask some of my Mac user friends. But I think it's a really useful program, and I recommend to at least give it a try. Okay, so it works okay on yours? Because I know that some people were saying that the most recent OS update was like, no, you're not using BlueStacks. But any other more questions? Oh, you haven't updated yet? Okay. Well, when you update, let me know. And that way I can be like, hey, yeah, it doesn't work. But no, it's fine. Are there any other questions or issues or something I didn't cover that you think I should have covered? Oh, of course. Yeah. I figured it was easier than answering the same 3 questions over and over again with Pattern Keeper to just have something for people to refer to. So, all right, well, I'm gonna sign off. Thank you all for coming, and I will see you in the stream, in the server. Bye, guys.